Alright YouTube, as a very quick aside, yes, I realized that the microphone was turned around the wrong way for my last video yesterday. Easy enough to fix it, you just literally turn it 180 degrees and you're done with it. It's time for the Occult video 122. Ghost hunting is foolish nonsense. It is quackery, it's fake, honestly. This is the case whether you're regarding like a Survivor-style reality show where a bunch of people who are using night vision for no reason, because usually you can just flip the lights on, they act really dumb, like they're confused or being possessed or terrified. You know, they always put on a big show for people. And it's really a lot like a Victorian seance when you really think about it. The Victorian sort of quack movement, seances, certain like those blue light medical devices that they used to cure cancer and stuff at the time. It's all sort of twained together. The quack medicine, quack science, like balneology and stuff like that, like water therapy, electrocute yourself to get more pep in your step. Here's a vacuum thing that grows hair on your head and stuff, was really twain with the more authentic side on the one hand, like the mesmerism and stuff like that was like an interesting phenomena, but it is real, as well as the seances, the sort of strictly spiritual side, but will channel the spirits of the dead, which was never true. You have like spirit photography and stuff, Carillion photography, none of that is real. It's just an interesting, perfectly rational, able to be explained by even secular science thing that happens to have been mysterious enough to enough people to be marketable at the time. Ghost hunting is the same way now. People's home, they get like, they have some mental disorder, they just feel out of balance, or they've got depression, or maybe there's poltergeist activity, real or imagined, or they see like a demon out of the corner of their eye. They call the ghost hunters in. What do? They show up with their little doodads and gadgets, none of which have any real scientific basis. It's like spirit boxes. The idea of you manipulate a radio, one of those little handheld radio sets, so it just cycles through the channels, and then what you're hearing is static plus some interference from actual local channels and stuff like that. But if you listen, it's like if you screw up your eyes enough, you can see a face in the grain of a wooden wall. At the same time, if you screw up your ears enough and you're already like amped up on the idea of ghost hunting and stuff, yeah, you're gonna hear like demons talking on this little walkie set or whatever that you've got. These things that they have to measure electrical zones or magnetism. Most of the time, the evidence of haunting, which almost invariably they say, yeah, your home's haunted, because, you know, every home at this point, almost, or at least every neighborhood in the United States, yeah, people have died there. There have been people who've died on almost every property in the United States built maybe pre-1950s anyway. Whether they died in the home or they died in the hospital or something after they got sick at their home doesn't make any difference. It's always used to rationalize why those little dust particles that you see, which you'll see again in every home if you know how to use the lighting properly. It's evidence of there's this ghost here and there's that ghost here, and there are only so many like subsets of human beings that can exist, honestly. It's a lot of it is guesswork. You say, oh yeah, a woman died here, she was like really depressed and fucking died. Well, yeah, the chances are a woman did die in the home at some point. Chances are, because you're talking about the pre-atomic era, yeah, it was probably, the person was probably poor, maybe middle class, like working class sort of stuff. Yeah, they probably were depressed by modern standards. It's guesswork. That's all it is. Even guessing their first names in many cases, you just research the property. You look through some town records before you show up to do your ghost hunting thing, and you can have a pretty good idea of such things. It's not really that hard. A lot of it is just literally guesswork, but also a little bit of cursory research, and that's all they do. They show up, they fiddle around with their little ectoplasm machine or whatever, and then they talk about all the ghosts that are on your property. But the thing is, ghost hunting in the modern sense is really not that different from sort of the fringe of so-called science of the Victorian era. In fact, it's worse. Back then, there may have been a sound spiritual basis, at least within history, the history of mythology, taken especially from Eastern cultures, to sort of explain what they were doing. That is, there was some sort of authentic basis. Now it's regressed to the point where some self-proclaimed psychic wearing a crystal of amethyst the size of their fist around their neck shows up and channels spirits, and then the ghost hunters come in and charge you $9.99 an hour or something, because they're usually fairly cheap, admittedly, to give you a good show. And that's really what they're there for. It's for entertainment purposes. It's like the answer to like InfoWars or something like that, only perhaps less honest, because they don't even run the disclaimer half the time. But that's what it is. And like this perennial idea of, oh, the police forces hired a psychic and the psychic found the body. Most of the time, anytime that's claimed, I'm finding no source that actually ever happened in the first place. Number two, wouldn't that, within secular bounds, wouldn't that indicate that perhaps the psychic was involved with the murder or something like that? That's what I would think. I'd call them a suspect myself if they successfully found where the body was buried, because that sort of psychic phenomena does not exist. It's not real. Having premonitions of the future or something like that, okay, maybe you can make an argument for it, but to be able to find what is essentially just an inanimate body lying in a field somewhere, yeah, the only mystery there is there a rational explanation other than secret powers that can't be quantified by science to denote why this particular individual was apparently aware of where a murder victim was buried? I'd think that would be my first thought. As far as ghost hunting goes, it gets even weirder. When you have a group of people, they go into like some French castle, but they're trying to talk to them in English or something like that. It's like, oh, or they have these little EVPs, these little electronic sort of voice print, I think it's an acronym for, and they record them, and it's like half the time nothing is being said other than garbled nonsense, and it's literally just static interference, but they'll interpret it to mean whatever they want it to mean, according to the background of the site that they're exploring. Oh, it's a Civil War graveyard, and this voice print here almost says Johnny Boy, so, you know, this is a rebel soldier or something like that. And that's really what it's all about. It's a way to make some fame and some money, essentially. And it's not real occultism. It's not real spirituality or anything like that. It's just an interesting sort of gig that they've dreamed up. It's like these ghost hunting shows. Some of these tales that people tell are kind of spooky, yeah. But they all rely upon taking the story at face value. That is, it's honest in the first place, number one, and number two, they're remembering events properly. And then they drag in the squad of psychics and ghost hunters, and they ramble around for a half hour on these shows explaining all the different phenomena and the backstory and stuff like that. And it's all very surreal. It's all very interesting, but at the same time, it is quackery. It's not real. When people say, oh, I'm a paranormal investigator, what you are is an entertainer. And you should be honest enough with people to say that that's actually what you are. Most of them are interested. They're either making money or it's an interesting hobby. Maybe they've fooled themselves into believing that it's real. Maybe they don't realize what these various apparatuses that they're using actually do. And they get onto some team because they happen to predict the Super Bowl once, so everyone thinks that they're a psychic, and that's really what it's all about. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's not occultism. It's not real spirituality. And anyone who thinks that you're going to get possessed because you're dabbling with paranormal research or something, yeah, I've got a bridge somewhere to sell you in Alaska. That just doesn't happen. Even if you assume that that phenomena itself is also real, which I don't happen to generally believe in, it wouldn't be caused by, oh, you fiddled around with the EVP and you used a Ouija board or tarot cards, so now you're possessed by Belial or something. It's like, I can't remember which one of these famous ghost hunters it was, like rambles on about Belial constantly in one of these shows and says, oh, I had to do battle with this demon and blah, blah, blah. That's a bunch of crap is what it is. If there were actually such a being gunning for you, you wouldn't be doing any battle. You'd be quite dead. So That's basically what I think about it. There's the long and short of it. It's sketchy. Much of it is outright fakery. What's not outright fakery is interesting entertainment in the guise of a scientific field. The reason being, there are some things on the fringes of science that aren't accepted that probably should, like the possibility that ancient man wasn't just total rube mode and actually had some technology earlier than we thought of. Maybe aliens did visit our ancient ancestors. At the very least, you're talking about a secular phenomenon involving other biological beings. Then there are things on the fringes of science that aren't accepted because they're unacceptable because they're full of shit. Ghost hunting and seances and things of that nature fall into that general category. I've looked at thousands of photos that people have taken supposedly of ghosts. 9 times out of 10, the photo is literally dust particles or the cord of their camera or a strand of their hair that they took for some sort of spirit contrail or something like that. 9 times out of 10, you can rationalize it away after looking at the photograph for 2 seconds. And in most of the remaining cases, you have some sort of double negative effect or something, some other photographic phenomena that's interesting. It's certainly a little bit spooky when you think about it, but it is a mechanical sort of thing. It has nothing to do with the spiritual world. Then, of course, you get that maybe one picture out of 1,000, one piece of video footage out of 1,000, that if you don't assume it's really well-made CGI or something, yeah, you can't quite explain it away. Maybe there is the occasional strange phenomena we're witnessing, but to chalk it all up to, oh, the spirits of the dead, or something, that's lazy, that's low-hanging fruit as far as reaching for an explanation of how these things actually happen. There are really weird things that happen in our existence. We've got people rambling about the Mandela effect, we've got quantum theory, we've got string theory and parallel universes and all these weird things that we can talk about even within a legit secular frameworks in many cases, and yet people would rather focus on, oh, I'm going to ramble at these dead people's spirits in this old French or German castle or something in English, and somehow they'll understand me. As though the science were already settled on what they were, number one, how to contact them, number two, and in many cases how to help or banish them, as though we had established with any objectivity that that's what they wanted or needed in the first place. So much of it is indeed quackery. That's about all. Peace out.